hands of God, in the hands of love. So I want to take a moment to thank our host for the Summer of Fun events. I heard there was a fabulous women's group yesterday with about 14 people. So thank you, Roz and Dorothy, for hosting that. And I also want to thank Tina for these wonderful tours that you've set up and the Museum of Making Music. If you've always wanted to go to that, go, the 22nd.
It's not like these, it's more interactive.
Interactive, so you get to play the instruments. Okay, that sounds fun. So thank you. And that's the whole purpose. Yes, let's give her a hand. That's the whole purpose of Summer of Fun, is to help us stay connected to each other, because we know people go on vacation, and if there's an empty seat next to you today, we'll just picture whoever usually sits there or might be sitting there. Just picture them smiling, having fun, and just feeling your thoughts of love and blessing to them. And we see them and more back in the seats after vacation, right? It's good to get away, and it's always good to come home.
Yes, it is.
So a number of years ago, a British newspaper had a curious headline that read, "Elvis and Jesus may be the same person." The writer went on to list amazing coincidences between the King of Heaven and the King of Rock and Roll, and cited these elements: that Jesus brought light to those sitting in darkness. Elvis studied to be an electrician. Jesus walked on water. Elvis surfed in the film Blue Hawaii. Jesus said, "Love your neighbor." Elvis sang, "Don't be cruel." Jesus said, "You will know them by their fruits." Elvis sang, "Tutti Frutti." So what do you think? You know, we all want to make meaning out of information we receive, right? Especially these days when there's so much information about so many things and conflicting information, and our minds want to connect the dots, you know, to have a greater understanding. It's kind of in our nature to do that. And we all want to have a greater understanding of the world and our lives and our relationship with God as well. But when we try to do this from our human nature alone, the picture is incomplete. Or sometimes all the dots of information aren't there yet, and we fill it in with what we want to see. Yes. So what we're talking about today is our power of spiritual understanding. That when we work with it, that it can give us greater clarity and peace of mind and assurance that God's presence and power is at work in every area of our lives, despite appearances. It's a way of connecting the dots, knowing there is no spot where God is not. So our unity teachings on understanding tell us that there are two ways of getting understanding. The first way is to follow the guidance of Spirit within. The second way is to go blindly ahead and learn by hard experience. Do we have any graduates from the School of Hard Knocks? Yes, I know.
Graduated yet.
Oh. Sometimes it's called the lessons of the cosmic 2x4. You know, we remember those lessons, don't we? Until I came to Unity, I thought life lessons had to be hard. They just had to be hard and painful, but I learned there was another way. You know that, right? There's another way that we can ask for understanding to be revealed in a more gentle way. In a more gentle way. So this requires us taking our concern to prayer, doesn't it? And being willing to be receptive to divine will, to let go of the personal will and open up to divine will, and to trust a higher wisdom, as Proverbs 3:5 tells us. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Doesn't that sound like the easier way? I know some of us like to take the scenic route the whole time. So spiritual understanding asks us to surrender to a higher perspective instead of obsessively trying to figure something out in our heads. So we can call on spiritual understanding anytime you find yourself saying, I've got to figure this out. I've got to figure this out. Has anyone said that before?
No.
Yeah. Call on spiritual understanding for that. So we can pray to see beyond any troubling circumstances or experiences, and as to see the situation or the person through spiritual eyes, from a spiritual perspective. So having the desire for understanding means we're letting go of attachment to being right. Is that easy to do? Sometimes. Right? Sometimes not so much. And that's why our powers of will and understanding go together, to have that surrender to that God's will, that higher way of seeing, and know at a deeper level that we have everything we need, that God is present right here in me and in my life, and to make choices from that place. As co-founder Charles Fillmore noted, no one ever achieves spiritual consciousness without striving for it. So it's not automatic. We have to want it and practice it. So think about something you've had a strong opinion about lately. Are you willing to have spiritual understanding about it? Sometimes spiritual understanding comes in a flash, and sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it's like the labyrinth that we enter in and we think we're getting closer to it, but we kind of go on the outside and we circle around and come back. But in the center of truth, that this understanding comes with us as we walk our path of life. How many of you have walked a labyrinth before? Yeah, it's a very wonderful spiritual tool. It can take a question of your heart to go into the center and have some quiet and stillness. And as you come out, too, just opening to that realization. So we have to want to have a perspective beyond our human senses and beyond our preconceived ideas. We have to let that spiritual solvent release that's my story and I'm sticking to it kind of attitude of being right. So with this intention, we open to new possibilities and we become participants in our own spiritual evolution. Active participants. Now that sounds a whole lot more fun than the School of Hard Knocks and getting surprised. So a couple of ways to see intellectual understanding and spiritual understanding, some differences they have. That intellectual understanding comes from outside of ourselves with the five senses, with what we see, what we hear, smell, touch, taste, read. But spiritual understanding wells up from within through intuition and insight. Intellectual understanding may possess information about God, but spiritual understanding has an experience of God. Emily Cady, Unity writer, said, "Intuition and intellect are meant to travel together. Intuition always holding the reins to guide the intellect." So do you value your intuition as much as you value your intellect? We're not taught to do that in school, are we? It's facts, figures, but the intuition, there's power there. There's a knowing, that spiritual understanding that wants to come forth. So we can strengthen this, we can practice this, and we can try it in little ways too. It's fun to do it when you go grocery shopping, to go to like the cereal aisle or the cheese aisle, and your intellect may say, okay, that's on sale, just grab it, put it in the cart. Or I always get this brand, just it goes in. But just to stand there for a minute and just let's see what your intuition reaches for. Might take a little longer to get through the grocery store, but just as an experiment, to just notice. And especially in the grocery store, to notice how your body reacts if you reach for something and it goes, no. Or it's like, oh, no, but oh, that one. Oh, that one, yeah. So we try it with little things, and then it gets easier with bigger things. So, understanding as a spiritual power is our ability to know and to comprehend, to realize a deeper meaning and higher truth of any matter. And it's our ability to discern, to really listen, to comprehend, to know what stands under or behind any experience. And we can ask, when we're seeking spiritual understanding, we can ask, what is God's Spirit, life trying to tell me through this? What is my message here? Or what good can come out of this? Even if what shows up doesn't look like good, what good can possibly come out of this? I remember when I was about 18 and living in Carlsbad, and our family lived off of Tamarack. And in those days, they had those metal poles for the turn lanes. Now they have, something aluminum or whatever, but they had those like steel poles that had the light, left turn light. And I was coming back from work, waitressing late at night, and I was stopped to turn left, and this truck just came barreling and pushed me into the intersection. And I was a bit hysterical, and we both went to the hospital. My parents came, and I was so mad. And my mom said, if you weren't there, what would he have hit? I think you were there, so he didn't hit that pole. And that was a whole new perspective for me. I just let my anger go, because I wasn't willing to see that. All I saw was my truck was totaled. So sometimes we can get that, insight will come through the words of someone else, of a perspective that we hadn't even considered. Fillmore tells us, intellectual understanding comes first in the soul's development, then a deeper understanding of the principles follows until the whole man, whole person, ripens into wisdom. So, those times when we have an oops, you can just say, I'm ripening into wisdom. He also reminds us that facts can be true, but truth can only be lived. Facts can be remembered and described, but truth can only be known and lived. So intellectual understanding can actually lead us to that deeper spiritual understanding that integrates in the mind, the body, and the spirit. And that's what we have here too. We come to learn, to know, and to also have that experience of God. Truth can only be known and lived, and that's kind of one of our unity principles, to live the truth we know. Those 5 unity principles, there's an acronym called One Clap. One presence, one power that we affirm every week. The C is for the Christ is in every person. A is C-L. Okay, we're on it. 1 C-L. Okay, we're on L. The law of mind action is that one, that our thoughts create. The A is for affirmative prayer is the key. And the P is putting it into practice. Putting the truth we know into practice. So you remember that? One clap. So there's great value in spiritual study, in classes, in practice, in workshops, spiritual practices that we have, in prayer, gathering together, getting that intellectual understanding that can sink into a deeper spiritual understanding. And each person on this planet has that ability to know and live the truth. That's our freedom of choice again, to know and live the truth. No matter where they live, what culture or educational background or economic background, spiritual understanding is the currency that allows us to pause and respond versus a knee-jerk reaction. It allows us to pause and respond and consider a compassionate action versus reacting with judgment or fear or anger or revenge. So what would the world be like if each soul knew and lived that from the truth, that they are beloveds of a loving Creator? They have everything they need to thrive. That we are all part of this human divine family, interconnected with each other, interdependent on each other. King Solomon in the Bible was asked what he wanted, and he could have asked for riches or fame or a long life, but do you remember what he asked for? An understanding heart. An understanding heart, to have discernment and compassion for his people, to rule justly and fairly. And as the story goes, that God was so impressed that he gave Solomon riches as well as an understanding heart. So what does it mean to have an understanding heart? I'm going to turn this on. Okay. So an understanding heart could show up in different ways. It could be giving someone the benefit of a doubt versus imagining that they slighted you or jumping to conclusions. An understanding heart could be having compassion for someone who is acting out from their pain versus judging them. We could pray for them. An understanding heart could be willing to forgive an old grudge or hurt. Could also be willing to have all the misunderstandings within our own hearts be dissolved. Misunderstandings about others, misunderstandings about ourselves. to let that go. I had a friend who wrote a piece about her mother that was so moving to me. It was like a long prose poem, and in it she wrote about how she felt pushed away by her mother. She was so excited to see her mother, she would run up to her, and her mother would go like this, stop her, push her away. And so she had several scenes of that. And so she grew up thinking that her mother didn't love her. And then when she was older and had kids of her own, she asked her mother, "Do you remember, why did you push me away?" And her mother just kind of smiled and took her hand and she said, "You were like a billy goat. You would come charging up and butt me with your head." And in that instant, something was healed. There was another dot to connect that was a bigger picture of what was going on. Because as a kid, what kind of self-awareness do we have? Some, right? But there was this whole other awareness of what that scene was about. And they were able to be closer after that healing. Emily Cady defines spiritual understanding as the revelation of God within your heart. She reminds us, no one can reveal God to you, nor can you do this for anyone else. Spiritual understanding is an inner revelation. And certainly we can be inspired by other people, by friends, by speakers, by authors, teachers. But there comes a point where we just kind of sit with all that we've taken in for it to sink in and for us to live it and embody it and own it and have that revelation of God in our hearts. So in what area of your life are you seeking greater spiritual understanding? Maybe it's with health, or relationships, or finances, or some kind of choice that you have, or purpose. I get that question a lot. How do I know my purpose? Especially when what we used to love to do, maybe we don't like to do so much anymore. That happens as we grow and change. And just know that there's something else welling up. That spiritual understanding will inform you and guide you. I like to see spiritual understanding as like the hub of the wheel for our 12 powers, that it's connected and strengthens and gives stability to our power of love, to our power of faith, of wisdom, of renunciation. It helps us make choices from love, going to wisdom, knowing what to release, what to embrace. So when we seek spiritual understanding, are you willing to give yourself some quiet time this week, just to go into the silence and take your questions there, just to be? Because asking for spiritual understanding, what we're really asking for is to know God more. Charles Fillmore advised, make your mind receptive to the higher understanding through silent meditations and affirmations of truth. The earnest desire to understand spiritual things will open the way, and revelations within and without will follow. And as one wise minister said, divine understanding helps us to find the meaning and miracles in the mess. which sometimes we're in the middle of it, it looks like the bottom there. Like, what is going on? And with the spiritual understanding, we're able to see the beauty or the pattern or the purpose of things that we go through and to make peace with them, to see it as part of our life experience and the great tapestry of our lives. And that's not the whole picture, that's the in process, or what it took to get there. But there is meaning and purpose in our lives. And knowing that God stands under every situation in our lives. No time is wasted. No experience is wasted, whether it's a school of hard knocks or being unconscious and doing things that make you, years ago, that make you blush now. No experience is wasted. No time is wasted because we get that deeper understanding from it, right? So we all have this God-gifted power of spiritual understanding. And we can call on it anytime we're feeling confused or facing a choice or trying to understand a challenge or asking for guidance as well. And it comes in different ways. Usually when the mind and body are relaxed, through intuition, through feeling, through dreams, symbols, a word or a phrase, a sound, a song, in dreams. Could come in dreams. And so our ability to connect the dots of information means we have to let ourselves be connected. To notice connections between thought and feeling. To notice the body's messages and our habits of thought. To notice our accumulated beliefs and eternal truths, and what serves us and what needs to be released. So taking time to listen to these aspects of your divine self, to be still, to let the study, the reflection, integrate, to gel, to allow space for realization to land, for that revelation of God in your heart, to slow down so you can feel it and notice it. And so let us close with prayer right now. As we say, thank you, God. Thank you, loving Spirit, for this expanded appreciation of our spiritual understanding capacity, expanding within us. And this week, may we allow it to make itself known in our minds and in our hearts, for that revelation of God to bloom within our hearts with peace, with joy, and with blessed assurance that we are part of a larger divine picture of God's love revealed. Amen. Thank you.